Hi, welcome to Something Simple and Light with Tolu Alao. In this podcast, we talk about three key areas: process improvements, manufacturing excellence, data analytics, and visualization. The goal of this podcast is to discuss practical ways to improve your operations day in, day out. Wow, there's so much to cover in these episodes, and I really hope that you pick one or two things that you can apply in your operations immediately. Fantastic. Let's jump into today's discussion. Okay, so in today's episode of Something Simple and Light, we're going to be talking about 5S, right? And I'm trying something different today. So, last week we talked about excess motion and how it can be a type of waste, right? And what we want to be able to do is explain practical ways in which we can, reduce excess motion, have a better workplace. And 5S is such, an important tool when it comes to workplace organization, because again, if your workplace is properly organized, if the location in which value is, organized in such a way that people spend less time looking for materials, looking for resources, and then they are able to add value as quickly as possible, right? They are not moving back and forth trying to find, equipment. So 5S is one of those tools, right? And the concept of 5S was, it's a Japanese term, right, where each of those letters S stands for a Japanese word, but we've been able to translate each of those S into English words that we can relate to, right? A lot of the concept that you talk about, was founded by, Japanese culture, based on Japanese culture, based on the way, the Japanese do their work, right? So the concept that we're going to talk about today, and let me just, get my pen, right, is loosely translated as 5S, and each of those letters stands for one component of this framework, right? So we have the first S, right, which is sort, and I'm going to look at each of these quickly one after the other, right? Then we have set in order, right, as another step, and then we have shine, we have standardize, and then it ends with sustain, right? So let's just look at what 5S is all about. So like I said at the beginning, 5S is a workplace organizational method, and it uses this Japanese word. So sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. Remember the way in which I've mentioned them, because that's the method, the sequence in which these steps are carried out. So you first of all do sort, then you set in order, then you shine, you standardize, and then you sustain what you have done so far. All right, so let's go into each of them one after the other and break it down some more. So when we talk about sort, right, sort is about removing things that are not necessary, eliminating unnecessary materials or tools from your workplace, right? So with sort, you want to remove things that are not necessary and keep what you need. So what you want to do first of all, right, when you want to start sort, is that you need to be able to itemize all that you have, right? So let's say I have a table where I say, okay, this is all that I have, right? So what is necessary, right? Pardon my handwriting. And what is unnecessary, right? What is unnecessary? So the point is, you want to be able to list out and categorize things that you need to have. So if you look at this example, for instance, this is an office environment, right? I shouldn't have shoes lying around, right? So this is not necessary here, and I want to be able to sort out all these things that I don't need, and then I will now decide that, okay, these are the things that I want to keep. So we are eliminating all unnecessary tools, right? Because again, when you look at your processes, there are things that over time you've kept just because, oh, let's just keep this, I might need this in the future, or you've just been gathering junk, right? You've been hoarding a lot of unnecessary tools and parts. So you want to be able to decide what is required now and what will never be required, or what might be required later, right? So just like I've written here in the slide, you want to be able to go through those materials and keep only essential items, right? Things that are not required can either be discarded or stored, right? So when we say that things might be required later, then the ideal thing is that you need to have an archive, right? You need to have a storage location for things that you might need later, right? And then things that you know for sure that they are no longer required, they are obsolete, right? We need to discard them so that the things that are required can be easily found, right? You don't want to have things that you use maybe once in a year or twice in a year, clogging everywhere when you have things that you need every single day, right? So this is the point of sorting. So you want to first of all sort, eliminate unnecessary things, and only keep what is required. All right, so what's the next S? The next S is to set in order, right? So first of all, you've already sorted out what is required and things that are no longer required. You've decided that, okay, let me keep this aside. I'm going to discard this. I'm going to store this somewhere, right? And so the whole goal of setting order is to have a place for everything, right? Have a place for everything. So you're going to give everything a place. And how you're going to be able to achieve that is by having, shelves, storage locations that, okay, this is where I keep all the screwdrivers. Oh, this is where I keep all the shoes. This is where I keep, so you basically want to think about your workplace and your workflow and try to create, a storage system that creates value, right? So it's free from waste. Value added tasks, right? Things that you need frequently are kept closer, they are kept lower. Things that you need maybe once in a while are kept, higher, and all of that. So you want to have a system where you are putting things in a particular place and then you have a place for everything, right? So the simple way to remember this step is to say that have a place for everything and put everything in its place, right? So have a place for everything and put everything in its place, right? All right, so that's for set in order. The third S, which is to shine, right? So first of all, let's do a quick recap. We have done sort, right? We've done sort, and then we've done set in order, right? So we've put everything in its place. Now we want to shine. So now that we have everything in its place, we can now start cleaning, right? So you don't start cleaning and shining when things are not sorted, when things are not put in a place, right? You're just, creating more work for yourself. So you want to even be sure that the things that you have are even things that you need to have, right, in the workplace, right? And then once you've done your sort, then you've put the location for everything, and then we can now start talking about, oh, is this cleaned, right? Am I removing dust? Am I removing cobweb, right? And ensuring that, everything looks, sparkling clean, right? So shine is such an important, step in the 5S framework. So we are cleaning the workspace and cleaning our equipment, making everything tidy, and then we now start talking about, at the end of each shift, let everybody clean their work area. Let's be sure that everything has been restored to its place, right? So in shine, you want to make sure that just as we have set a standard for how we put things in order, we've sort, right? At the end of my work shift, the process of shining, or in the process of cleaning, right, I'm returning things that I took away, to other places and say, bring this back here. This is the place for this. This is the place for that. And then we can now properly clean and we are good to go. So this step ensures that the workstation is ready for the next, the next user, the next shift, or the next person that is going to, use the workplace, right? So the next S, right, is what we call standardize, right? And you see that each of these built on the previous step, right? So again, we started with sort, right? And then we set in order, and then now we have done some shining, right? And then that leads us to standardizing our process. So in most businesses, at the point of standardizing, you would see that you start having things like 5S markings, right? So you have a location where, as a standard, this is where I'm going to keep certain materials, right? As a standard, I clean this place once a week, right? As a standard, somebody cleans this location every 1 hour, right? So you begin to set standards for how you're going to maintain and ensure that there's some form of consistency,
right? So you could have checklists, right, in the process of creating this standard, where you are checking and ensuring that these procedures are followed consistently, right? So you're setting up this across your operation and making sure that this is how we're going to, ensure consistency, right? So regardless of who is doing the sort, regardless of who is doing the set in order or the shine, the person knows that this is the standard, and then they're able to repeat it, right? And then you have what is called, interchangeability here, right? So that's for the fourth S. And the final S, right, which is what we call sustain, brings all of this together, right? So we sustain by using the standard. So we've created the standard in the previous step. Now it's now time to, consistently use the standard. So you might need to, audit this process based on this standard from time to time. So you might have a monthly audit where you go around checking using this standard and say, are we still following the standard, right? This was the standard we agreed at the beginning, right? Is this still what we're still doing? And so an independent or somebody who is not part of the process comes and checks, right, to ensure that the standard is being sustained, right? So we are sustaining what we said we will do, right? We are making sure that this is now a way of life. So you want to make this a way of life for your people, for your operations, and then you are sure that you are getting the commitment and the support of everyone involved. So you ensure discipline, adherence, right, to the rules and procedures of the 5S. And so the last thing you want is for people to, start backsliding and going back to the old way, start dropping their shoes in the wrong place, start dropping their tools anyhow, and all of that. So they know that there's going to be an audit, and this audit is, usually unannounced, right? So it could be anytime. So just so that becomes a way of life. Whenever a material is used or a tool is used, it is returned to its place, it is properly put in its own place, right? And then you're able to, do shine, you're able to create that standard and then make it a way of life by sustaining it, right? So this is basically, the 5S framework and how it works, right? I hope you've been able to pick some value. Let me just show you some examples in the next slide of 5S being used. Okay, so if you look at this now, we have it before, right? And see that before 5S was implemented here, right, you had tools all around, you have this container here, you have just, a mixture of different things. There's no one place for, all these materials, right? And then after 5S is implemented, right, we've decided that all of this will go here, another one will go here, right? So anytime I'm looking for any of these materials, I know which of these box to check, right? And I know that the whole of this container is supposed to be, within this location, right? So the beauty of all of this is that instantly, right, you can see if there's a problem. So if I see, for instance, that the whole of this tray, this container is no longer within this portion, I know that something is wrong. It's no longer, in its place, it has been moved, right? So you move it back, you can easily adjust, right? You can easily tell that something is wrong, versus this where it's just haphazard, everything is everywhere, right? So this is one example. I have another example. This is another example where I've created a place for everything. So in the process of, using our sort, so let's just look at how this was done, right? At the beginning, I had a lot of tools, right? And then I first of all, did my first S, which is to sort out tools that were required, tools that were obsolete or old or no longer required. And then the ones that were no longer required, I tossed them aside, right? They were discarded. And then after that, I decided that, I was going to set in order, right? So I put a particular place for everything. So I decided that, I'm going to put this here, I'm going to put this here, I'm going to put this here, right? And then I have an order, a place for everything, where I've decided that this is where all of this is going to be, right? And then after I've done this, I've done some shining, right? So I clean this board, I clean this location where all of this, so that everything is, is sparkling clean, and then I can see them clearly, right? And after that, I've built a standard, right? So in building that standard, I've said, I don't want any of these tools to be outside of this region, right? This is the region for this, this is the region for this is how this tool will be used. Every time it is used, it has to be brought back here and all. And I have a checklist or whatever I'm going to use to, ensure that there's a standard here. And then from time to time, right, I'm going to do some form of audit or check, right? So I could say that at the end of every shift, right, or at the end of every week, I'm going to validate that all the tools have been returned, right? There is no missing tool. And I could even, as a part of my standardize, right, I could also have a logbook where every tool that is taken is signed out for. I know who has collected that tool, and then in sustain I'm checking that that is what is being done. Any tool that is missing, maybe I have a standard that you must return every tool at the end of every day, right? So, and I see that, oh, there's a tool missing and it was collected the previous day. Why was it not returned, right? So these are some of the things that you want to do as you think about 5S, right? And all right, fantastic. I trust you've been able to pick something from today's episode, and I look forward to hearing about your success. For more content like this and to keep in touch, you can follow me on LinkedIn at Tolu Alao. You can also subscribe and follow me on YouTube, also at Tolu Alao. Until next time, just give me something simple and light.